Okay, let's dive in. Imagine a time when journalism wasn't quite what we think of today, not just the cold hard facts.
Right. We're talking the 1960s, the 70s, a pretty revolutionary period, actually.
Yeah, reporting really started to shift, didn't it? Away from that traditional, objective stance,
Completely. The old guard, they were very focused on detached impartiality.
which maybe felt a bit out of step with a world that didn't feel very objective at all back then.
Exactly. I mean, it was a time of huge upheaval, new ideas, new movements.
Just immense complexity. And the straight news, well, sometimes it just couldn't capture it all, could it?
No, it struggled. And what's fascinating is how that era gave birth to something called new journalism.
Ah, yes, new journalism.
And this wasn't just a minor tweak, it was a really profound shift in thinking.
Also,
Well, it argued that maybe a deeper truth, a more felt truth, could actually come through the writer's own perspective.
through their subjectivity and using literary techniques,
Precisely. It became this sort of unique shortcut, in a way, to getting a real handle on the cultural changes happening.
offering more than just bullet points, like a visceral sense of it all.
That's a great way to put it. Visceral.
And when you think about the people who really drove this, who shattered those old norms, two names always jump out.
Oh, absolutely. Hunter S. Thompson and Tom Wolfe.
Yeah, giants of the movement, both absolutely central.
But, and this is key, their styles, their whole philosophies,
Mhm.
actually very different.
Totally different. So I think that's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it?
I think so. To explore how these two, incredibly influential figures, both under the new journalism banner.
How they differed in
No.
style and approach.
Yeah. And then maybe take a critical look at the legacy. Because it wasn't without its critics, this movement.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
There was and still is a lot of debate around it.
And those debates, they still feel relevant today, I think.
Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with Tom Wolfe. He's often called the architect, right?
That's a good place to start. Yeah. The architect of the new journalism. He put together that big anthology in 73, The New Journalism.
Ah, the one that sort of laid it all out, showcased the writers, the techniques.
Exactly. It was like the foundational text.
Yeah.
And his own approach was, well, incredibly meticulous.
With how?
His research was exhaustive, almost like an anthropologist studying a tribe.
Okay.
And then he'd reconstruct these scenes, full dialogue, often third-person point of view, really immersing the reader.
So not just saying they had a meeting.
Oh, no. He described, how someone adjusted their tie or this nervous little laugh or the exact details of the room.
Making you feel like you were right there, almost like reading a novel.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
He wanted to capture the essence of a moment or a whole subculture.
Often with that flamboyant style he had.
Mm.
And a bit satirical, too.
Yes, definitely satirical. He was brilliant at observing what he called status life.
Status like.
Yeah, how people, often without realizing it, broadcast their social standing, their hopes, their anxieties, through how they act, what they own, how they talk.
Ah, I see. Like in the candy-colored tangerine flake streamline baby.
Perfect example. Or the electric Kool-Aid acid test.
Yeah.
Dissecting an era with this almost microscopic detail.
It's amazing how he did that, kept that sort of anthropological distance, but made the writing so vivid and immersive.
It's a real skill. Now,
Okay.
imagine the complete opposite of that careful construction.
Okay.
That's where Hunter S. Thompson comes in.
Right. He took the subjectivity in new journalism and just ran with it to the extreme.
To the absolute extreme, creating what he called gonzo journalism.
Gonzo. What does that really mean in practice?
Well, gonzo is all about the writer being in the story, actively, sometimes wildly, participating in the events.
so less reporting on it, more reporting from inside it.
Exactly. And the writer's own subjective experience, maybe even their chaos, becomes central to the whole thing.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas has to be the prime example.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. It just plunges you into this hallucinatory reality.
Where facts kind of blur with his perceptions, his outrage.
Yeah, it all blends together. It creates this potent, sometimes disorienting mirror of the times.
Because his approach wasn't detached observation at all.
Not in the slightest. It was about visceral experience, raw personal outrage.
He basically became a character in his own reporting.
A deliberately unreliable one, often, using profanity, outrageous behavior.
Yeah.
All to expose what he saw as societal absurdity.
Like becoming a witness to the breakdown of things by kind of embodying it.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. Exposing the breakdown from within.
So if Wolfe was the architect, carefully building these detailed structures.
Thompson was, maybe.
Yeah, the wrecking ball.
Huh, maybe. Clearing the ground, perhaps, but definitely leaving a mess.
A necessary mess, some might argue.
It's just so clear how pivotal they both were, but the contrast is just stark.
Absolutely. Wolf, the observer, the chronicler, analyzing culture almost like a clinician.
Meticulous, dissecting things.
Hmm.
Whereas Thompson, pure participant, he is the story much of the time.
Right. His own chaotic journey becomes the report.
And the writing reflects that. It's intensely personal, emotional, raw, often deliberately unpolished.
A world away from Wolf's carefully crafted prose.
Totally. I mean, they both use techniques like scene-by-scene construction, dialogue.
Sure.
But Thompson pushed those boundaries way further. Embraced subjectivity, deliberately blurred fact, and, well, subjective experience.
Or maybe even deliberate fabrication sometimes.
Yeah.
To get at a larger truth.
That was certainly part of the Gonzo claim, yes?
And this whole radical redefinition of reporting, it undeniably reshaped things, didn't it?
Oh, profoundly. New journalism left a huge mark on both journalism and literature.
It showed that, serious reporting could also be incredibly engaging, readable.
Yeah, it really broke journalism out of its sometimes dry academic box. It inspired a whole generation to put voice and style into their writing.
You saw it influencing sports writing, culture writing, even science writing.
That's a crucial point. It really broadened the palette.
But, and it's a big but,
Yeah.
such a dramatic change wasn't universally applauded.
Not at all. It came with a lot of intense scrutiny. And this is where those debates start to feel very current, I think.
Okay, let's get into that. What were the main criticisms? The blurring of fact and fiction must have been a big one.
Huge. Critics argued it just fundamentally undermined journalistic integrity. How could you trust it, especially when the writer's own, often messy experiences were front and center?
And the subjectivity, the potential for bias.
That was another major concern. Look, the writer's voice can be engaging, that's true, but critics worried that personal opinions, emotional responses, they could heavily skew the narrative.
Making it really hard to pick out the objective truth, especially with complex stuff.
Exactly, which often led to something critics called the personalization of politics.
What do you mean by that?
While new journalism often focused on the experiences and emotions of individuals within political events.
Which can make things more human, more relatable.
It can. But it can also oversimplify complex issues. It shifts the focus onto personalities, maybe away from policy details.
And the danger there is?
Well, critics argued it could amplify divisions, contribute to polarization by making everything about personal conflict rather than substance.
Okay. And what about just picking and choosing facts? Selective framing.
Another big one. The argument was that writers, may be driven by their narrative goals or their own viewpoints,
Might emphasize facts that fit their story and downplay, or ignore ones that don't.
Precisely. And that, critics said, could create a really distorted picture of reality.
Which is obviously a major concern in any kind of reporting. It risks just reinforcing what people already believe.
Yes. And that leads straight into the idea of echo chambers and confirmation bias.
Because the very subjective nature means you might mostly read stuff that confirms your existing beliefs.
Exactly. Which can make you less open to different perspectives, more stuck in your own biases.
Okay, so if we try and sort of sum this all up, the core tension is really that innovative storytelling power.
Versus these pretty significant criticisms about objectivity, about potential bias, about its effect on how people understand things.
You had Tom Wolfe on one side, the architect, the careful observer, dissecting culture, almost like a sociologist.
Meticulous chronicler.
And then Hunter S. Thompson, the gonzo maverick, the visceral participant who became the story.
Turning personal chaos into a journalistic method, essentially.
So the movement, despite all its innovations, it really faced pushback for subjectivity, personalization, selective framing.
And potentially contributing to these information bubbles or echo chambers.
Which brings us back to today, as you, the listener, navigate the media landscape now.
It's worth thinking about how these old debates about facts, subjective experience, the nature of truth in reporting, how they still echo.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. When you encounter stories, especially ones that feel very personal or very strongly opinionated.
Maybe pause and think about that critical reading aspect.
Yeah. What might be getting highlighted here? What's maybe left out? How is this particular story trying to shape your understanding?
It's really a deep dive, not just into the past of journalism, but into how we all engage with information every single day.